Hello, this is the Kessel Fun Book Club. Today we'll be talking about The Last Shot by Daniel Jose Older. I am Liz, and I have three other co-hosts with me. Please introduce yourselves.
I'm Todd.
Hi, I'm Sholti.
Hi, I'm Lai.
And we're going to start with Force lore. So was there any Force lore in this book at all?
Not
Well,
much.
yeah, I've only found some reference to a game of chance being likened to the Force, with the speaker dismissing the Force, but not much aside from that.
We do have, Force sensitives in this book, so it's not like you're not going to get any of your favorite characters that are Force
hmm
sensitive. They just didn't use any of their
I think
abilities.
the only people we have are Leia and Ben.
Baby Ben.
Right. Leia is in her senator capacity, and Ben is in his baby capacity. So
hmm
So no
neither of them
Force.
are really, out there saving the world yet. Well, Leia is in her own way, but Ben not being that active. So
So did this affect your thoughts on the book at all, since it didn't have any Force lore in it or any sort of Force sensitivity in it?
I think we have enough of that in other books and stuff. It's not like we haven't seen that before.
I appreciated that they weren't really the characters on their sort of quote unquote mission or to fix things. I like that they weren't depending on some altruistic knowledge to guide them and sort of just going gung ho and taking things into their own hands and trying to
hmm
fix it in a real life way, or not real life, but you know what I mean, like a reality based way where they're getting a ship and they're gonna go to this place and then they're gonna fight some baddies and then you know what I mean, instead of just
Yeah,
like
Yeah.
it's very realistic.
yeah, instead of meditating on it and like waiting a while and then making a decision. So I like that aspect of it,
Hmm.
how just
Yeah.
the action just kept going and going.
Referring to what Lai has just said, I liked that their mission stemmed from actually fixing their old mistakes, because that's how it felt to me. Like it
hmm
was their past catching up with them.
So now we're gonna move on to world building. Todd, what did you think about the world building in this book?
World building for this book was pretty good with again not much force, but more of like everything else in the galaxy. Like we got the New Republic, which I think is about 2 years after the Battle of Jakku, where they're set up and doing everything, and Mon Mothma is running it. We have like the where they go to the Imperial prison planet. We see stuff like that. Also, lots of droid stuff. Like with L3 and the whole bad guy and all this thing. It's definitely a lot of lore like that and world building in this book.
Shadi, what did you think?
Yeah, as far as world building goes, there's heaps of it. Like we had this history of Cloud City, how it was built with the help of the Ugnaughts. We had the insight in how New Republic works,
hmm
and how actually ineffective it is, and it gets expanded further on in Bloodline. Um, Except by the point of last shot, there is still Mon Mothma as this, central figure holding it all together.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I think that there was this rebel veteran, who was wounded in the Battle of Hoth, and he was actually begging. So I wonder what happened to the other, veterans of the events of the original
The
trilogy,
Galactic,
right?
yeah, the
Yeah,
Galactic Civil War.
yeah. Also, I wonder because there is still the demilitarization going on. Like that was there is this point with the blockade, this incident at the prison planet, um, and yet still when they go to Condor for the to recruit the Slicer, he works in digital warfare department. So I have some issues we have the demilitarization and we have digital warfare.
Maybe it's like propaganda and stuff like that.
Condor is the slicer, right? So that'd be in like getting information,
Oh, yeah,
things like
yeah,
that.
you're
Yeah, and
right.
he's mentioning that. So I wonder, warfare, but with whom? Yeah,
Hmm.
and yeah, there was other tidbit like Dathomirians weren't natives to Dathomir. Like a few 100 years ago, they forced their natives out. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and in general, I think it also ties nicely, especially with aftermath, like why Chewie is still on Kashyyyk because
Mhm.
he's there with the family because with
Mm-hmm.
his family because he helped to liberate them. Also, you know, the characters of Condor and Sinjir. So yeah, probably lots of other things which
Oh
I
yeah.
don't remember. And
It fits really well in with the other material we have, and adding more like small tidbits like the Dathomirians, things like that.
yeah,
So if you're interested in like lore or like expanding the universe, this is a good book.
yeah, definitely.
And did some of you guys want to explain the timeline of this book because it does jump forwards and backwards?
The timeline is interesting. We have the main plot line, which takes place, I think, about 2 years after Jakku. So is that like 10 after Yavin?
About, yeah.
Yeah. So that's the main one, and we also have a Han plot line that takes place 10 years before the main one, and a Lando plotline that takes place 15 years before this.
That guy's chapters start 20 years
Yeah,
before like
started 20 years,
how he
and
starts out and then it progresses.
mhm,
So this has a lot of time jumps in it,
yeah,
which actually worked really well. I thought it would be confusing, but it was written really well.
yeah. I think they work together. They work well, but it's
They give context to
mhm.
everything that's
Oh yeah,
going on later on. And the Han that we see is post Han Solo movie Han, before A New Hope, right?
yeah. In his chapters with younger Han, it's right after that.
We'll continue on to supplemental background information. Lai, did you have any last thoughts on world building at all?
I loved the information about the demilitarization of the New Republic and how you know that the First Order is lurking in the background and sort of being rebuilt secretly. Right? Is it this early? Is it this early that they're rebuilding the First Order again?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that started right after Jakku with Salon. So they're out there, but they're barely a thing,
Yeah.
like fledging.
I think, but by this point they are still hiding in the unknown
Mm-hmm.
regions.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they haven't by the time they're starting to really get together, I think is by Bloodline, which
Right.
is
Mm-hmm.
almost
And then
20 years after.
there's Bloodline. There's the end of Lost Stars. There's
Mhm.
Battlefront 2 as well.
Oh,
That
okay.
you can
Yeah.
get more information on the very, very, very start of First
The
Order.
First Order, yeah. So I kind of liked how that's like you something to think about, like with how the New Republic is trying its best, but something else was out there waiting to strike. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think with the New Republic is just to show that even though it has replaced the Empire and it's definitely better, it's still not perfect. I have a quote on that, like, let me find it. Yeah, so, like, everyone is still scrambling to make sense of what this new democracy is going to look like, so it's like being a teenager. Every new crisis feels like the first one. And, well, maybe they didn't really get over this phase, but they still were trying.
Right. I mean, government in Star Wars has always been,
Flawed.
yes, very
Oh, yes.
flawed to
Especially
me.
here and in Bloodline, where it's pretty much completely ineffective by that time.
We'll move on to supplemental background information. So, what neat little tidbits did we learn from this book?
For me, sorry if I focused on this a little bit, but I remember when we were talking about this, I thought it was interesting that so during, wartime, relationships and family relationships are not really talked about, I think, besides the Skywalker family, right? Like what they were going through.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was interesting when we learned about I don't know how to say it, Kasha and Lando, and how they were in the military together and then sort of had their fling and had time to, canoodle a little bit during the fighting. And I think that was like the first time we heard about a relationship like developing, actually, well, besides Han and Leia, a relationship developing within that kind of context
Within
of
war,
the military,
yeah.
and how other soldiers sort of socialize with each other. So I thought that was kind of cool to hear about that.
And I like how Lando kept trying to deny it that he was falling in love with her. Like, they met, I think, like a couple times within the time frame from Hoth until, like, the time in the book. And, like, he kept denying it. And even she denied it. I think, like, Lando described it as, like, or she described it as just, like, a warm body. Like, they just needed someone there. And, like, that's fine. Like,
Yeah, that's fine.
And they both understood that, which is why I thought them coming together at the end of the book was so sweet, because they, like, agreed on, like, oh, this isn't just this. It's something more.
It wasn't just wartime.
Yeah.
Socialization, quote unquote. But
Canoodling, as
canoodling.
we now put it.
Sorry, I didn't know what to call it.
Shadi, what were your thoughts on any background information that we learned?
Oh, let me get started on this. I have seen some like a lot of things which I found interesting. So it was mentioned that we have plenty of insight into droid lore, and there is, for example, it makes sense that even though they are programmed to perform sets of tasks, they can have their favorite types of tasks, or ones which they are not too fond of. For example, we had a protocol droid who loved to translate, but he didn't like the situation when he had to, make amends for, people being rude.
Right.
Also, we have Han is still referred to as General despite not being one anymore, which is also a reference to Aftermath when he, well, I'm not going to spoil. Basically, he's not a general anymore due to what happened in the Aftermath. Also, there was a reminder that Ben Solo was born precisely as the Empire was dying on Jakku.
Gosh, so poetic.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like poetry. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a space Lego, and they apparently hurt, stepping on them hurts apparently as much as stepping on our real life Lego. So
That was so cool.
Yeah.
yeah, so next time you step in them, you can think, oh, it's exactly like in Star Wars. Yeah. Then we have, I was reading, and it thinks that Ewoks, despite being a part of the New Republic only for how many 3 years, after Battle of Endor, and it seems that they have adapted well into the life there. We have Ewok calf farmers. We have Ewoks who served as companions for veterans with PTSD, which is also in Aftermath. And here we have an Ewok programmer.
Right. Pipka.
Yeah.
Pika.
So cute.
Yeah, it's really incredible. Like, you have 3 years, and they were, what sort of life they were leading. They had little to no technology, like when they when they thought C-3PO was some kind of god, and here, like 3 years later, we have an Ewok programmer, and not just a regular programmer, she's a prodigy,
Yes.
right?
She's talented.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, we had like there was the moment when Han is looking at Baby Ben, and he mentions that he has such ancient eyes, and me being not a native English speaker, I sort of confused it with a 1,000 yard stare, and I was it was kind of like I was just picturing Baby Ben just like sitting here, with an empty gaze, like
Burning holes into his dad's eyes, like staring at him.
Also, it's like at one point in Lando's past appears this guy, like this obnoxious dude, like this wannabe bounty hunter who's named Sardis Ramsin, and he's the main character of the From a Certain Point of View story, Born in the Storm, which is actually my favorite one from the whole. Collection. Like so apparently he didn't work out as a bounty hunter, but he ended up being a stormtrooper from the same squad which met Obi-Wan and Luke. Like,
oh yes,
wow.
I remember that.
I remember this.
I remember that.
Okay.
Oh wow.
So here is his
Come
fate.
on, story group.
Like this story is so,
Come on, Pablo.
I know, jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, there is I've mentioned the characters from Aftermath, Condor Kill and his partner Sinjir Rath Vilus, and apparently they got married in between the books, and it's really, heartwarming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's it. Like, there's so much more stuff, but I wasn't able to, to just note everything down. Also, I wouldn't like to spoil all the fun for other people.
Like, if you've read a significant amount of the books or shows or anything like that, there's definitely a lot of references in there for you in this one.
Yeah, these books are full of Easter eggs, and like so many characters can come into a book, and it could be just like a little reference, but it'll be like so big if they've been in like a TV show or a movie, and it's like, oh, there they are. Like, that's pretty cool.
Oh, and there was a reference to Cruel, or Kroll. I don't know how to pronounce that. And we got a Captain Kroll.
Yeah.
In the book.
I remember that.
So I thought that was cool, and I, almost jumped out of my seat when I saw it. And it was funny, the character that character ended up being sort of being bullied by Leia a little bit, but it's fine.
Oh, and just like the whole Baby Ben thing, like seeing the relationship that him and Han had when he was small. It was so heartbreaking. Yeah.
Because it's obvious that Baby Ben loves Han, and Han feels so insecure.
Yes, about not being a good father, and
husband.
he is. Oh my gosh.
I know, it's so sad. Because you know where it ends up, and it's like, crap, dude.
Yeah, and it's like you see that Han is trying his best, but he didn't have good parental examples in life, and he's doing his best, but it just
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like also his relationship with Leia, like you can tell he lets her do her thing when she needs it. And he's just, he's happy they're taking care of Ben. And
I also got flashbacks to Bloodline, reading their interactions, because in Bloodline it gets, turned up to 11, because we have them the same way, but they are completely separated, because, physically separated. And and it's obvious that they miss each other, but they are both, tied up in their responsibilities, and they almost have a chance to to just reconcile and just go gallivanting about the galaxy, but the events against them. It's yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to character cast now. Let's just mention, who was in this book, like the main characters or side characters, anything like that.
Well, my favorite was Pipka because she's so cute and talented, and I just loved the scene where she meets Chewie, and she loves Chewie because he helped save her sister in the Battle of Endor, I think. And so cute. She hugs his leg, and they hold hands, and go about their mission, and just sort of go on. And I love that how no one really understands what's Peepka's saying, but she's like they still like communicate with her in some way.
Yeah.
So she was my favorite character.
I really like the whole Lando and L3 thing. L3 is just amazing. I think I'm gonna love her in Solo.
Oh, for
like,
sure.
So much depth, and like I would never have expected that from a droid. And I think she might be my new favorite, because K2SO used to be my favorite, but I think she kind of won that.
Oh yeah, she's such a cool character.
I think my favorite is the Gungan guard at the Grimdock archive, because the Grimdock prison. Sorry, like
he was
he's
so
just,
funny.
He's so sassy.
Yeah, it's like,
so great.
Yeah, it's like because there's the situation where Han sees him and he's like, "Oh, let me handle this," and he's like, "Oh, welcome, Misa," and the big Gungan is like, "No, hold up here, like, let me just no, please don't, stereotype me," and yeah,
That was so funny.
yeah, and so it's like he's also like an epitome of working a job which you hate, like when. How the other events show, like he hates his coworkers. So just let me say that.
The character cast in this was pretty great. We have lots of characters, new and old, showing up in here. I really like Han and Lando, especially since they're the focus of this book. Getting to know them better, with Han being a father now. How he's dealing with that, and Lando deciding if he wants to settle down or what he's going to do and who he is. It's really interesting to read.
Yeah, and more in the more general scope, it's like we have the baby Ben who really, I don't really like children, and even I think like he's a really sweet there, and it's just so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I like that he still throws tantrums. Like every second he can.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and like he can't comprehend the hollow projections at the point, and it's like he sees his dad and he wants to touch him, and he's
I
he's just confused.
Gosh, it's so sad.
I know.
Also, I really found the the Han's perspective on interacting with Ben really adorable, even despite the heartbreak of his insecurity, but it's still so sweet. Yeah. And also, like, I think in literature in general, it's quite rare to find father's perspective on child rearing, as opposed to the mother's perspective. Yeah. And there is also one thing that when in the 10 years before the main events period, it still feels as if Han and Chewie are still getting used to each other, because we have like Han saying the wrong thing and then Chewie getting a bit threatening towards him. So I'm not sure if you got the same vibe as I did, but I think it's still like they haven't been with each other for such a long time as it has been during the original trilogy. Like they still need to work things out.
The Han parts feel really close to Solo and them meeting and everything.
Yeah.
Especially considering how he feels.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a spoiler for that.
We'll make it a spoiler. So yeah.
Yeah.
But there
it's
are,
pretty early on in the
yeah.
book because and it's not much was said. Like he's just sulking about something and he doesn't want to say what.
Mm-hmm.
There's a character in this book from Han's past. Do we want to mention her or
Sana?
no? Yes, Sana.
Yes.
Oh.
Sana Saros is a character from originally the Marvel comics, where she was introduced as Han Solo's wife, or, well, fake wife, how that was. And it's really nice to see, characters from there coming over here. And this feels like very early in their relationship, where the comics feel like they definitely knew each other for a long time. So stuff like the continuity and connecting with the characters, really good.
Yeah, I
Let's
appreciate
go,
it.
story group.
Oh, right. So
Yeah, this
good.
book definitely excels in that.
So we'll move on to a language level, and basically like if it's a hard read or if it's appropriate for kids or adults and stuff like that.
This does feel like more of a adult Star Wars book, and it is a part of that line compared to like I don't know, Lost Stars or any of the other junior novels and young
Yeah,
adult
it's
novels.
definitely more adult.
Mhm.
You do have the whole like Lando and his girlfriend thing, warm
Yeah.
bodies, all that.
Canoodles. Yes.
Yeah, canoodles happen.
Parenthood.
We do have the use of in-universe cuss words.
Oh, yes.
So, I mean, like, Criff is now a cuss word in universe, and I'm happy about that.
Criff was an Aftermath too,
Also,
so
Oh, it was an Aftermath?
yeah. So just
Oh, okay, so there you go. It's,
Yeah.
There
it's
it
even
is.
more in canon now. What
but
else?
not only in the universe were words, because we also have ass, for example. Yeah.
Well, that was in The Last Jedi.
Oh, was it?
Oh, it was.
That big ass door.
No, and there's also a lot of, especially when it comes to the droid stuff, there's a lot of gore.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot
Yes.
of violence. So just, I don't, if your teenager or child is interested, just letting you know there's a lot of violence in this book. So maybe if you want to scan that before you let them read this book, yeah, just watch out for that.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that droids being slaughtered would be
Gory.
gory, but they made it gory.
There was this one segment which basically there is little to no action, like just two characters strolling through one place, but description makes it sound like something straight out of horror.
Yes.
So yeah,
There's lots of horror vibes
Yes.
here.
Appreciated that, actually. So that was great.
English is not my first language, so I think this it was advanced, and it was really mature because it's not only the swear words which were mentioned, the themes, but also some of more technical stuff which Daniel Jose Older uses, the metaphors, the puns, and whatnot. So it's quite advanced, but I still had no problem understanding it.
So we're gonna move on to basically overall story, what we thought, what we, if we could rank this book, where would we rank it? So the way our rating system works is we're gonna do 1 out of 5, because most of the Star Wars books are pretty good. And I think out of 10 would just be too much. And then also we are going to be reviewing comics as well. So we're going to use the scale of Lost Stars because the majority of us really, really like Lost Stars. And we think it's a little funny inside joke that Lost Stars is one of the best new canon books. So, Todd, what is your rating of this book?
Overall, I'd give it 4 out of 5 Lost Stars. Overall, I really like this book. It's one of the better new canon Star Wars books that I've read. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it is up there. I really like the writing and the story and everything.
Wait. I want to put some context within Todd's what Todd is saying, because Todd has read a lot of books and comics. So
Yeah.
all you listeners out there, Todd is very well read in
I've
the
read
Star
most of
Wars
the
universes.
yes,
So
I've read most of the comics and almost all of the books at this point. It's very good. It's worth reading. I heavily recommend it.
Lai, what are your thoughts? And then give us your rating.
okay, I also give it 4 out of 5 because I wish there was more Ben and Leia in this book.
Mm-hmm.
If there was more Ben and Leia, I probably would have gave it a 5 out of 5 because I loved all the supplemental stuff. I love the world building. I love sort of learning so much more about Han and the way he thinks. As an individual person, as a father, as a husband, as a smuggler, and even we didn't mention it, but when they were having, when he had to do his official duties as a sort of helping form the pilot union, or is that what it was?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was interesting, just hearing how he was so bored by it and didn't care about all that legislation and stuff. So 4 out of 5 because I thought it was a really well-rounded book. Loved the language, loved the droid lore, and I felt like the supporting cast of this book was great too. Like they weren't boring at all. So yeah, I definitely recommend this book.
Shadi, your thoughts and then your rating?
Okay, so my rating is 4.5 out of 5 Lost Star. And I wouldn't say it's my favorite one in the canon expanded universe, but it's pretty damn close. It's like, I really like how it's the, you know, after Return of the Jedi and Aftermath, it's like how the reality ensues, like, and they suddenly have the daily problems to deal with, like it was mentioned, with Han hating, all the meetings involved, and Leia being busy, and the reality of raising little Ben, and yeah, I like it. Also, like I've mentioned, the theme of catching up with the past mistakes and fixing them so their future can be better, or at least not significantly worse.
Okay, I give this book, I'll give it a 4 out of 5 Lost Stars. It was pretty good. I'm not that really much into droids, so I think that's where it kind of lost me. But the whole like Ben, Leia, Han stuff and Lando stuff was really good and really interesting to me. Um, it was very enjoyable. Yeah, it was a good read. I recommend it. So, yeah, 4 out of 5 Lost Stars. If you want to follow us in a galaxy far, far away, please follow us on subreddit /KesselFun, Twitter @KesselFun, YouTube, KesselFun Podcasts, SoundCloud, soundcloud.com /KesselFun Podcasts. We are also available on Pocket Casts, KesselFun Podcasts, and available on iTunes, KesselFun Podcasts.
The sacred Jedi texts!